Hello, and welcome to the show. Welcome to NRN, the Noble Racing Network. I'm your host, Justin, and today we went racing at Dega. We went Dega racing, baby, and just like all the races at Talladega, it did not disappoint in the drama department. In fact, it was a pretty wild day for racing overall because the F1 race was also pretty intense from Baku, so we've got all of that to cover. But we start with NASCAR, going Talladega racing in Sweet Home, Alabama. So, if you remember our last restrictor plate race at Daytona, it was an absolute crash fest. A derby, a Daytona derby, if you will. And you may also remember how insanely and out of control all those cars were to drive. Well, things had not improved, and the loose race cars was still the topic of concern amongst all the teams. And things got kicked off with a bang in practice when Jamie McMurray and Ryan Newman would crash into one another, and Jamie McMurray would actually get airborne and roll the car several times on the backstretch. He would be okay and would be in the race on Sunday, even though he said he was pretty sore after that very intense crash. He even got hit on the driver's side door. So we were getting things kicked off in Talladega with a bang. NASCAR decided though to slow the cars down because they noticed in that crash they were going 204 miles per hour. So NASCAR came in and they wanted to reduce the size of the restrictor plate to help cut the horsepower. And did it work? Well, they were still going 202 miles per hour in the draft. But hey, they weren't going 204, so good job NASCAR for cutting them to 2 miles per hour. Kyle Busch would be trying to win 4 races in a row, something that hasn't happened in at least 10 years. But trying to do something like that at Talladega was going to be a very tall order for a race like that, because it's basically all random chance. It's really only where you happen to be running and if you miss all the big crashes. But could Kyle Busch do it? Well, if anyone could, maybe he could. But it would be the Fords with the quickest pace, and Kevin Harvick and his Stewart-Haas racing teammate Kurt Busch would be 1-2, and Kurt Busch was a very experienced plate racer, so he was going to be one to watch in the race. Stage 1 though, not much going on in that stage. The cars were impounded from being worked on, so I think the drivers were just having trouble hanging on to their cars. They were more focused on driving their cars than they were racing their cars, and I don't think they felt comfortable or brave enough to start racing those cars in those early laps. And it was a lot of single file racing for the most part, but it was looking like a Penske kind of day, and bad Brad Keselowski would win that first stage. In stage 2 though, he'd get a speeding penalty, and that would shuffle him back in the order. Fords were still out front though, and Paul Menard for the Wood Brothers was able to stay ahead of Joey Logano to pick up the stage 2 win. That was his first career stage win and the first stage win for Wood Brothers, so it was looking like a good Paul Menard type day in the Wood Brothers there. They were having a solid run, and they're a Penske affiliated team, and Penske was still running up front at this point, so it was the Fords all the way. In stage 2 we would have that first big one though. Eric Jones would lose the car like many others, but he just wasn't able to hang on, and he would get into Jamie McMurray, who again would suffer some problems at Talladega. Talladega wasn't being too kind to him. He didn't get the car airborne this time though, so that's a plus. But Eric Jones would get into Jamie McMurray, who would take out Trevor Bayne, and Martin Truex Jr. was also involved in that crash, and he continues to have like the worst luck out of all the drivers as of late. All kinds of things just keep happening to Truex Jr. that keeps him from having solid days. Stage 3 though, our final stage, would be very Dega-like. Business started to pick up, and as we got down to the end of the race, and of course that brought out yet another big caution with 23 laps to go. Jimmy Johnson would lose his car, and he would basically wipe out the majority of the field. 14 cars were involved in that wreck, with the number 2 of Brad Keselowski, the number 21 of Paul Menard. Both of our stage winners were involved in that wreck, and the number 14 of Clint Boyer was appearing to suffer some major damage there. He had some burnt damage too. That car was on fire. William Byron's number 24 Chevrolet, he also suffered some damage, which was a bit tough because Byron actually was having a pretty solid race. He was hanging around there in the top 5. He led a couple of laps, but he was not able to come home with the finish. The other cars involved in the wreck included Austin Dillon, our Daytona 500 winner. Denny Hamlin would also be involved in that. He was another guy that he looked to have the strongest car other than the Fords, but he had a speeding penalty that put him in the back, and he would be involved in that crash. Ryan Blaney was also involved. Kyle Busch, who was looking for 4 wins in a row, was involved. Michael McDowell, who had been having such a good run running in the top 10, he was involved in the crash. Darrell Wallace Jr., AJ Allmendinger, Brendan Gaughan, and Casey Kane were all the drivers involved in that race. Like I said, 14 cars. It might have been easier just to tell you who wasn't involved in that one. But Joey Logano, Kevin Harvick, Kurt Busch, Chase Elliott, David Ragan, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., those were going to be your major players with just a handful of laps to go. Those were the guys who were running up front. They didn't mix it up too much back, actually, when the race went back to green. They kind of stayed single file, stayed with one another, but you just knew that they were just waiting for those final laps before they started making their moves. And with 2 laps to go, they went after it, and Kurt Busch and Stenhouse made a move, but they could not make that work. Joey Logano was able to block that move successfully, and he would hang on to win the race at Talladega, breaking a 1-year losing streak. It had been since that controversial Richmond race in the spring since Logano had gone to victory lane, but Joey Logano would hold on, and he would get the Talladega win, picking up the first win for Team Penske this year, and Joey Logano's first win in quite some time. But let's go ahead and take a look at our top 20 finishers from Talladega in today's race. Of course, Joey Logano would pick up the win for Ford, so the Blue Oval would get their win, and they were strong all day long. Kurt Busch, who started second, would wind up finishing second in his Ford as well. Chase Elliott, though, he would break up that kind of Ford pack. Chase Elliott would sneak up there in his Chevrolet and get a 3rd place win. So that good 2 solid races for Chase Elliott, which is what he needs to get his team going in the right direction. They were 2nd in Richmond, 3rd here in Talladega. I know he's sick of finishing 2nd and 3rd, but still good run for Chase Elliott at Talladega. Kevin Harvick, our pole sitter, he would finish 4th, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. would finish 5th. David Ragan would finish 6th. Good run for that number 38, and David Ragan, he's a very good plate racer, and plate races are always the best tracks for small teams like him to really go up there, have solid runs, run up in the front. So good run for David Ragan, who brings that car home in 6th position. Eric Almirola would finish 7th. Alex Bowman would finish 8th. Ryan Newman 9th. And Daniel Suarez would finish 10th. Chris Buescher, a really good run for him as well. He would finish 11th. Jimmy Johnson, despite causing that multi-car accident, he would come home to finish 12th. Kyle Busch would finish 13th. His teammate Denny Hamlin would be behind him. Ty Dillon 15th. Darrell Wallace Jr., he finished 2nd at Daytona. Wouldn't be so lucky here at Talladega. He would finish 16th. Casey Kane would finish 17th. Ryan Blaney 18th. Matt DiBenedetto, he would finish 19th, and DJ Kennington would pick up the 20th place finish. That is the top 20 finishers from the Talladega Super Speedway. What a race that was. Never disappoints. So we got what we normally expect from Talladega. I mean, these cars still seem to be out of control at the restrictor plate tracks all day long. You could see the drivers sliding around out there and really fighting their cars to keep them pointed in the right direction. It looked like it was an absolute handful and quite the workout. And I don't think, though, this made for good racing at the start. But once they started making those adjustments, I think they started to have a little more confidence in their race cars. But definitely in stage 1, the single file racing, I think it was more about just driving their cars than actually racing their cars. Also, Ford was on it today. Very dominant performance from Ford. There was not a whole lot of variety leading this race this afternoon. Ford was pretty much in control of this race from the start. And they worked well together as a team. You actually could see the Fords out there working together. Team Penske and Stewart-Haas formed a pretty solid alliance out there, and they were able to keep a monopoly on the lead. So that was neat to see the 4 teams working together to keep that blue oval out front. The only other car that looked strong was Denny Hamlin, and wouldn't you know it, he got that speeding penalty. I know it's hard to believe Denny Hamlin speeding on pit road, but he certainly did, and ultimately that cost his day. You can't make mistakes like that, because that put him back in the pack where he was running when that caution came out. That took him in the big one. So had he not had that speeding penalty, he might have still been towards the front. But he said in an interview that he likes to just try to get everything he can out of it and doesn't like to leave any time out on the racetrack. But he might need to start maybe slowing down on pit road. But Joey Logano may want to enjoy this win because it was announced that his arch nemesis, his big nemesis, Matt Kenseth, will be returning to action for Roush Racing. Kenseth actually started his career at Roush in the number 17 car back in 1999. You may remember that DeWalt car back when he was a rookie, came in with Dale Earnhardt Jr. They had some fun races to watch. And he even won a championship with that team in 2003. Kenseth won't be going back to the 17, though. He'll be part-timing for the 6, sharing that ride with Trevor Bayne. But you got to know that Kenseth could make a full-time return next season in 2019. So maybe we've not seen the last of Kenseth in victory lane. But I'm sure Joey Logano won't be looking forward to that because those two guys, no love lost between them. And maybe Kenseth can turn Roush around and make the team like the Roush of old, because they certainly are not as strong as they used to be. The next race will be from the Monster Mile at Dover, and that's where Jimmy Johnson could turn things around because his record there is very impressive. That's one of his best racetracks, and he needs something positive to happen to really jumpstart his season. Dover is a really good place for one of the strongest drivers in the field right now, Kyle Busch. By the way, his top 5 finishing streak has also come to an end. Dega is just rough on these boys, is it not? So now we head over to F1 racing on one of my favorite circuits. That's Azerbaijan in Baku, the street circuit out there. One of my favorite tracks on the calendar. Look forward to it every year. Qualifying was really tight with Kimi Räikkönen being, I thought, the guy to get the pole. I thought he was going to get the pole. But in his final run right there in Q3, just got the back end of the car out right at the end of the lap, which killed all of his time. So he'd wind up with a 6th place starting spot, while his teammate Sebastian Vettel, he would get yet another pole for Ferrari, and both of the Mercedes would be starting behind him. And it's odd that going into the 4th race of the year that Mercedes still hadn't won a race yet. That was still very surprising to see. So could they turn it around here in Azerbaijan? We'll just have to wait and see, wouldn't we? And it was a semi-clean start to the race at first, but then Raikkonen would get into Esteban Ocon, and Ocon would be out of the race right there on lap 1. Raikkonen would have damage to his car as well. Fernando Alonso would also pick up a puncture on that opening lap. He got into one of the Williams drivers. And after just one lap, we'd be under the safety car with lots of tore-up race cars. And that's the kind of action that Azerbaijan always provides, and why it's one of my favorite places, because the place is just nuts. And everyone would get back underway with Vettel still leading when the green flag would fall, and Verstappen was making some daring moves on his teammate Ricciardo, and he would get the 4th place around his Red Bull teammate. And now over the next several laps, and I mean several laps, those two Red Bulls were going at it. And I don't know why Red Bull didn't put a stop to this, but they let them race, and several times Verstappen almost wrecked his teammate Ricciardo. And I mean, it was so much fun to watch. I'm not going to doubt that. It was a ton of fun to watch, and it's F1 racing at its absolute best, but not with the teammates, man. And then finally, you just knew it was going to happen. And then it happened. On lap 40, Ricciardo was using the slipstream on Verstappen, and he couldn't stop in time, and he ran into the back of Verstappen, who was blocking him. And so both of the Red Bulls would be out of the race. And again, I cannot think of why that was necessary. I don't know why it was necessary for those two Red Bulls to be racing each other as hard as it was for 4th place. And both Red Bulls, because of this, would miss out on the points. And I just don't know what they were thinking. I don't know why Red Bull didn't put a stop to this. And 2, this is like the 4th time this year that Verstappen has run into someone. It seems like every race he runs into something or someone. I mean, it's fun to watch, but at what point do you have to sit this young man down and tell him to chill? Like Samuel Jackson in Pulp Fiction, bitch, be cool. Damn. Anyway, that would bring up the safety car onto the track once again, and that actually helped Bottas get the lead over Vettel because of the way the pit stops fell, and that's not the first time we've seen this year. Ricciardo was able to win the race basically doing something with the safety car like that in China, the last race that we ran. But under this was really bizarre. Under the safety car, Roman Grosjean wrecked by himself during the pace laps. And he was trying to keep heat in the tires, but he winded up wrecking the car all by himself, took himself right out of the race, just trying to keep the tires warm. And that was bizarre. I don't want to talk ill of Grosjean because, Haas, I'm an American, so I pull for Haas because they're Americans. You want your country to do well, You got to support your country, right? America. But Grosjean, when I was talking with Samuel Brandt in the interview that we did, he's an SRL guy. When I was talking to him, I told him, do you think Grosjean's ever lived up to his potential? I don't know, man. With just a handful of laps to go, though, Bottas, he gets a great start over the field, and Vettel drives into turn 1, trying to reclaim the lead, and he had the lead for like 2 seconds, but he locked up the tires, and he slid, and then he would wind up losing spots to Hamilton and Raikkonen. It was a really fantastic start, but Bottas got a great lead out there, and it looked like this was going to be Bottas's day. Bottas was going to bring home the win for Mercedes, and he was going to be the hero, but wouldn't you know, Bottas, as the leader, suddenly picked up a puncture, running over some debris on the racetrack, and that would hand the lead to Lewis Hamilton. And I almost think that Lewis Hamilton put a hex on that car. I think if Hamilton somehow did it, he used like Jedi Force to like move debris in front of Bottas's car, because I know that Hamilton wanted to win that race. And I think Hamilton wielded that tire to blow. I just think he used some kind of Jedi godlike mind trick that he has to wield Bottas's tire to blow, and Bottas would wind up not even finishing the race when he was like 3 laps away from getting the win. So Lewis Hamilton would hang on to win his first race of the year and the first win for Mercedes in 2018. Still surprising that it took this long to get here. Kimi Raikkonen would be second. Sergio Perez for Force India, check that out, would get on the podium in third. What a great day for that bunch, Sergio Perez and Force India. Bravissimo. Very good job. Sebastian Vettel, he would finish fourth after leading the most laps. And he actually is going to lose the point lead. Lewis Hamilton is now our point leader. Not by much, though. Fernando Alonso would battle back to a 7th place finish after that puncture on lap 1. Lance Stroll would also get the first points for Williams this season. Williams hadn't scored any points until Stroll came along and got the points. But only 13 cars would finish the race. That's why I love Baku, because it's always exciting. That street circuit, Azerbaijan Baku, is almost like Formula One's personal Talladega. It just kind of chews up cars. But what a great weekend of racing. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Justin with NRN, the Noble Racing Network. Be sure to follow us on Facebook. You can go on Facebook, search NRN, the Noble Racing Network, to read up on all kinds of articles that happen throughout the week on racing, all things racing from multiple leagues, so you can be in the know for your water cooler talk. Follow us on Facebook. We also have an Instagram and Twitter page, Noble Racing Net, that you can follow along with there. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week from Dover. Take it easy.